Today, I wanted to go over an article I found on Reddit. Someone was saying that Carney hasn't really done much to strengthen our trade with other countries while on his taxpayer funded trips. And then someone replied to them with this article saying, actually, if you took 2 seconds to look into it, here's all the deals that he's done for the country. So I actually wanted to look into these deals and see if there's any substance here for our tax dollars. Also, quick correction. Yesterday, I said that this article was for the first 6 to 8 months he's been in office. It's actually for the first year. It turns out he's already been in office for a year. Who knew? All right, let's get into it. So, Prime Minister Mark Carney is living up to his self-avowed globalist status. Since taking office exactly 1 year ago, this article was written March 11th, so it's a couple days ago now. Um, the globe-trotting former central banker has been outside of Canada 68 days, or 20% of his first year in office. That's crazy.
I say shame!
During the election, Carney promised Canadians he would diversify the nation's trade globally. And so far, he's been devoting a lot of time to that core plank uh, of his plan. The decision to diversify Canada's trade makes sense in the uncertain world of US President Donald Trump's second term, where the current CUSMA deal um, is in jeopardy and Canada is in the midst of a trade war with our biggest trading partner. Well, according to Carney, this is the greatest deal that we have. He didn't need to negotiate any other deal, so we're totally fine, right?
We have the best deal with the United States right now.
Right.
But has Carney managed to start to pull Canada away from its independency on trade with America? What results and deliverables has the Prime Minister actually secured for Canada in the last year for all of the days spent abroad? The proof is in the pudding. International trade is particularly important for Canada, accounting for roughly 65% of GDP. So far, Canada's exports to the US still made up 72% of total exports in 2025, down from 76% the year prior, driven by a decline of goods sent down south and an increase in products exchanged in other regions, primarily Europe. Although a noteworthy shift, signs suggest the dominance of trade with the US isn't going away anytime soon. Yeah, no shit. They're our closest ally, and they have 10 times our economy and way more funding than we do. They're the reserve currency. So obviously they're going to be our greatest trading partner. That doesn't mean we don't need to diversify, but like duh. All right, let's get into a few of these trips here. The rest of the intro doesn't really have any substantive shit, so I'm just skipping it. So the first trip he made was to France, and as you can see here, after being only being in office for a couple of days, Carney flew to meet President Emmanuel Macron in Paris on his first foreign trip as prime minister. He and the French president announced closer Canadian-France cooperation on intelligence and security while reaffirming the Canada-European Union Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement by agreeing to further build trade ties. So they have an agreement that they agreed upon to agree to make better trade ties. And he went to France for this. Nothing was signed, it's just verbal. If you've seen the Melania documentary, she also spoke with Macron's wife for I think I think it had something to do with some program for children. I'll try to find the clip and post it.
My next step and my next goal is to foster relationship and work on it with like-minded leaders and establish coalition. And when we do, I hope you will join me. With pleasure.
I don't want to play too much of the clip because I do think you should just go watch the movie. But wow, what a novel idea. Does the prime minister not have a phone? Like, um, she did that over the phone. She did it over a Zoom call. Why are you traveling to not make a deal, to just talk about a deal? Like, you should be going there to sign documents that have been drafted, not going there to just talk about things on the taxpayer's dollar. Now, I'm just gonna change gears real quick, and I want to put this into perspective because not only is the travel costing us money, but the food costs us money too. Here, um, Canadian Taxpayer Federation, which is a great YouTube channel. I'll post this link in the description. You can go check them out. They went and took a look at um, how much it's costing taxpayers for some of these trips. They don't have all of them, and I'm not going to highlight everything in the video, but I'm going to just look at two different clips here and we'll go over it.
Carney and his entourage going to Washington, D.C. How much did they spend on airplane food?
Right. Well, Washington, D.C. is a short hour flight away, about an hour and a half. So think Calgary to Vancouver. So in that 3 hour round trip, they spent $21,000, which works out to be about $7,000 an hour on airplane food.
So we are spending $7,000 an hour for Carney to go to Washington to meet with the President of the United States. Okay. There's another clip that I'm going to get into a little later, but let's take a look here in this article. America, United States. Okay, so he has apparently been only on 3 trips. Yes. Okay. To the US. Let's take a look at these specific trips, and also just to highlight, this article has the trips in chronological order, right, in terms of the dates. It is missing one trip that I remembered from here's the video from CBC. I'll also include it in the description, where right after Carney wins, he went in May to visit the president, and they didn't really have anything that happened. You know, Trump just said good job on winning. That was basically the gist of it. But let's take a look at these 3 trips that he's made. So Carney attended the United Nations General Assembly in New York, holding bilateral meetings with world leaders and announcing Canada's new economic partnership agreement with Indonesia. So this, I think, is one of the only concrete deals that he's made. We'll double check that later. The Prime Minister and President of Indonesia, um, Prabowo Subianto, signed the Canadian-Indonesian Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. Yeah, so here they actually signed something. Wow, that's crazy. Which, once ratified later this year, will reduce or eliminate 95% of tariffs on Canadian exports to Indonesia on goods like soybean wood, potash, and wheat. Carney also gave a speech to the UN and announced support Palestinian statehood. So this trip happened in the midst of when we were negotiating, quote unquote, for um, better tariffs, like every other country was doing, but we actually weren't really doing that. And this was when Carney decided to say Palestine is its own state out of nowhere for no, like it was unrelated to what was going on. And as you can see here, during this trip, a lot of the substance that was discussed was another trip, right? When he went to Indonesia and actually signed some documents. So, like, this one doesn't really count. And this one isn't to Washington, it's to New York, but, whatever, it's still to the States. The next trip, this time it was to Washington. So Carney met with Trump and senior U.S. officials to discuss trade disputes and potential agreements covering steel, aluminum, and energy. Again, nothing concrete. It's just another discussion. All right, next. Last trip he's made to the U.S. in the past year. Carney traveled to Washington to attend the FIFA World Cup. I hope he's not charging taxpayers to attend the FIFA World Cup. I hope that's on his own dollar. Also, crazy idea. These people are getting paid. Our government officials are getting paid. Why aren't they paying for their own food on these trips? Like when a music artist travels for concerts, they're getting all of these things docked from their pay, their food, where they're staying, their travel, whatever. I'm not a monster. Travel could be expensed up to a limit per year, in my opinion, but food should be coming out of their own pocket. Why are we feeding these guys doing these trips? They should be paying for that on their own with their salaries that they're given for their position. It's insane. Okay, let's take a look at his second trip. So his second trip was to London, and he met up with Keir Starmer to back up Canada-UK economic and defense ties and discuss expanding trade through the Canadian UK Trade Continuity Agreement. And comprehensive and progressive agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. No formal deal was made while the Prime Minister was in the UK, but he did take the time to visit the King. Oh, that's lovely. I'm glad he went to visit the King. That sounds lovely. Let's take a look to see if he's made another trip to the UK in the last year, because this trip, as you can see, was March 17th. Today's date is the 21st of March. So it's been a bit over a year. All right. So he has trip 11. Returning to London for the Global Progression Action Summit, Carney met with Starmer and business leaders to promote investment in Canada and deepen economic ties. The two prime ministers discussed further expansion of the CPTPP. Carney didn't sign any trade deals or partnerships with other nations while on this trip, but did discuss strengthening the Canadian Australia trade agreement. Okay, so he's been back to the UK 2 times, and I believe, well, okay, whatever. He's been back 2 times, and still nothing has been signed in the past year. They've just had two different discussions. This literally could have been an email or a Zoom call. Now, let's look at, I think, trip number 3 to the Vatican. After spending a couple of weeks back home, Carney jetted to Rome for meetings with Italian leaders and officials during a visit centered on diplomatic engagement and strengthening bilateral relations. So here he went to visit the Pope, and I believe he met with J.D. Vance again. And they again discussed bilateral trade between the two countries. So nothing really happened here. He met up with Zelensky to talk about the war in Ukraine while in Italy. And he spoke with the US vice president. This trip is the only trip I think they've made to Italy. Let me double check. Vatican. Yes, Vatican. What about Rome? Yeah, okay. So this is the only trip they've made to Italy. Now, let's continue watching the clip from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation because they have the numbers on how much they spent on food for this trip to Italy. So let's take a look.
And Jen, the records that you got your hands on, that wasn't the only expensive in-flight catering that they were billing us for, was it?
Oh, sure. There was a list of airplane food costs. So, on a trip just to Italy and back, so just two legs of the trip, they went through $94,000 worth, which I think is about $5,200 worth of food an hour. And that's an 18-hour flight round trip. So probably they're spending some time resting, sleeping, and then you got to wonder how they were even making time to get the rest of that food into their systems because there's only so much time in the day.
$94,000. Does this seem like $94,000 worth of deals being made? Nothing happened. They went there to meet the new pope, and then they talked about Ukraine, and he spoke a little bit with Vance. And you're telling me that that trip cost almost 100,000 of our dollars when nothing was signed, nothing happened, no work was done. It's just smooching. Like, what the fuck? Lastly, let's just look at the conclusion. Again, I'll post this article if you want to go over the full thing, but these were just the few trips I wanted to highlight that kind of infuriated me. So, in terms of his negotiation with trade agreements with new partners, Carney has made important steps towards diversifying trade, but has few concrete accomplishments to this point. Only one new trade agreement has formally been signed with Indonesia, and it has not yet actually been ratified. So even the one deal that was signed has nothing happened with it yet. That's great. If all of the trips are as expensive to Europe as the Italy trip, then they've spent in the last year a couple $1 million just on food. Fuck travel expenses, just on food for these travels of our money. That is disgusting.
I say shame!
Anyway, that's going to be it for this video. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And peace.